to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today's video is going to be my mid-year book freakout tag. So this is one of those tags that I kind of return to every year. I did this tag last year, and then I also did it the first year I had my channel in 2020, so figured I'd keep the momentum going. I also was in need of a video to post for today's video, and the video I had in mind, I couldn't get to work. So I'm doing this because I've seen a couple of other people start to post this. I think I usually wait until at least the end of June or the beginning of July, so it's actually like the midpoint in the year. But obviously I'm not doing that this time. So without further ado, I'm just gonna answer the tag questions. I will link the original tag if I can find it. I'm not sure if I can at this point. I have no idea who came up with this tag, but if I can find that, I will link it for you. And I will also have the tag questions listed down below, so you can feel free to make your own video and tag me in it. I'm not gonna be tagging anyone in this, but if you see this and you would like to make this video, consider yourself tagged and tag me in your video. And also, you can just answer the questions down below if you feel so inclined. But without further ado, I'm just gonna jump into the first question. So the first question on this tag is, what is the best book that you've read so far this year? And my answer is I found this question particularly tricky because although I've read several books that I gave 5 stars, I don't know that any of them are like standout favorites. So the books that I chose for this are The Marriage Plot by Jeffrey Eugenides, which I think I read back in February, but I could be wrong about that, about when exactly I read that. And then Love and Other Thought Experiments by Sophie Ward, which I read last month. I will link both wrap-ups where I talk about either of those books. And I might have read The Marriage Plot for a vlog. I cannot remember, but I know I read it because it was recommended to me by someone. I don't know if that was part of a vlog or not. My memories of the past 6 months are kind of foggy, apparently. But The Marriage Plot is this book about a group of college friends, and it's primarily like a love triangle. So it's this one girl and then a guy who's always sort of had a crush on her and been into her in college, and then the other guy named Leonard who she ended up dating and who she ends up marrying. And it's mainly about the main character, whose name I can't remember right now, which is not great, but she studied English and wanted to go to grad school for whatever the subsection of literature is that covers the marriage plot, which is like the Brontes, Jane Austen, all of that. She studied those plots, and it's like a modern day analogy to the marriage plots of, are those Victorian novels? I'm really not sure. I apologize. But I really loved this book because of the way it dealt with the different character relationships, and also it used some non-linear storytelling, which I thought was very compelling. I really enjoyed the way that while we were only following the characters for 6 months of their actual life, every time something would happen, to explain it, we would go back to details from one character's childhood or a time when they were in college. And it really heavily focused on their time in college because that's when they all knew each other, which again, I found that really interesting and very insightful to learning more about the characters. I found that I really cared about the characters because of all the backstory that I got from them, even though technically the book only covered a small portion of their lives. Love and Other Thought Experiments I've talked about more recently, so I will try to be brief, but it's basically 10 separate, they're not short stories because they're all part of the same narrative, although I think you could read them independently and get a lot out of each of them. But it starts with a couple, Eliza and Rachel, who are deciding whether or not they want to have a baby, and Rachel thinks that a bug crawls into her eye one night, and it sort of brings up all this strife in their relationship. And then each of the stories follows a different perspective, but they all relate to the same cast of characters, if that makes sense. And I loved this book. I cried, I laughed, I thought it was really, really incredible. And I do recommend that. I think it was longlisted for the Booker in 2020. Question 2 is, what is the best sequel you've read so far in 2022? And honestly, I haven't read that many sequels. Particularly, I haven't read that many sequels that I've liked. So I am gonna say Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, which is the second book in the Stormlight Archives. This is the only sequel I've given 5 stars this year. And it's also just like, they're good books. It's a high fantasy series, and we follow multiple different perspectives. There's all sorts of political dealings going on, and like intermarrying and trying to figure out how to get the most power for yourself, but also how to protect your family. There is obviously magic and stuff because it's a fantasy, but the magic system in this book is very cloak and dagger. So it's kind of under the surface, and they know that certain swords, for instance, they have swords called shard blades, I think, actually. So I did read these books. The shard blades have special powers, and there are people who have special abilities, but they don't really know, at least as far as I am, how they get these abilities, why some people have these abilities, or like what's going on with them. But there is sort of an implication that it is otherworldly. So it's very interesting. The third question is, what is a new release that you have not read yet, but you want to, or you hope to get to soon? And for this, I'm going to say An Arrow to the Moon by Emily X.R. Pan. I've talked about this pretty recently, so I won't go too far in depth, but this is a Romeo and Juliet retelling with a Chinese mythology twist. Yes, Chinese mythology. And this author actually wrote one of my favorite books of 2020, The Astonishing Color of After, which is a YA contemporary novel about grief, and it has like a magical realism twist. That book is incredible. It handles grief in a really interesting way. I really like books about grief. It's something that I'm learning about myself. That's not about this book. I don't know that much about what this book is about. I just bought this because I loved Emily X.R. Pan's other book so much, and I've been waiting for this for like a year since I first heard about it. And I'm really excited to get to this one. Question 4 is, what is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? Mine is R.F. Kuang's Babel, which is, I think, supposed to come out in August, but I could be wrong about that. It's a dark academia book set in the translations department of Oxford. And I have not read R.F. Kuang's Poppy War series, but I really want to. But this book, something about it sounded so intriguing to me, so I really want to get to Babel this year. And the other one that I'm really looking forward to is the second book in the Amari and the Night Brothers series, Amari and the Great Game, which that does come out in August, I'm pretty sure. And that's by B.B. Alston. And that's a middle grade fantasy series. So I'm really, really excited to pick up where the first book left off and get back into that world because I really, really enjoyed book 1. Question 5 is, what is your biggest disappointment of the year? And I think a lot of people are going to be mad when I say this. House of Sky and Breath. I think I gave this 4 stars on Goodreads. I might not have. The ending had my jaw on the floor, and I will continue reading this series because of that. But I did not think that this 800-page monstrosity, first of all, needed to be as long as it is. And second of all, it's not very well written. Not enough happens to justify the length of this book. And I just felt like the characters weren't as developed. The first book puts a lot of work into developing the core characters and making you care about them. Book 2 did not do that same work, and it's not even because the characters that you already care about you know a lot about. It's just because I just feel like it was lazy. I don't know. I was not a huge fan of this. I probably should lower my rating to a 3-star. I don't think this book was bad. I was just expecting to love it and did not. The other big disappointment that I have is Devil House by John Darnell, which I read in a video somewhere that I will link. Is it over here? I think it's over here. Regardless, I will link that. No, is it over here? No, it's over here. I don't know. I truly don't remember what side the things are on. I always see it when I'm editing, and I'm like, obviously. But I'm always wrong, so confusing. I will link that for you if you want to watch it. The vlog where I read Devil House by John Darnell, and that book, I think, was just a mismarketed book. I think that was part of the problem. It was marketed as horror, and it's definitely more just like general fiction. Also, I personally am much more of a fan of John Darnell's songwriting than I am of his book writing. He did some experimental things where he included snippets that were written. I don't know if it was actually Old English or if it was just his interpretation of Old English. He did list a lot of sources about knights and things like that, so I assume it's actual Old English, which I don't speak. So for me, I didn't understand why it was included. It didn't feel necessary. I know that he was trying to do something with it. I just don't think he accomplished that goal. And it's making me hesitant to pick up the book by him that I own, which is Universal Harvester. So if you've read that book and like it, let me know. If not, I don't know. I really don't know what to say about it. I I was so disappointed by Devil House. Question 6 is, what is your biggest surprise of the year? I have 2 for this as well because I can't seem to pick one book for any of these. My biggest surprises are both YA. One is YA fantasy, and that's A Far Wilder Magic by Alison Saft, which again is a YA fantasy. And I did vlog my reading experience for both of these books. They're both new releases. So I'm not going to talk too much about it, but essentially Alison Saft's book is about this girl whose mother is an alchemist, and she is like good at shooting guns, and there's this competition in her town called the Half Moon Hunt where you try to kill this fox, but it's not actually a fox, it's actually a demon that looks like a fox, and you can only do it during the half moon. So it's like this specific time, and you win money if you win. And then our male character is trying to become an alchemist, so he goes to seek teaching by the girl's mom, and the girl's mom is not around, so she tells him that her mom will come back soon and that her mom will come back if they win this half moon hunt. And so they team up together, him as an alchemist and her as a shooter, to try to kill this creature. I wish I could remember what it was called, but I loved this book and I was not expecting to, because I've just been sort of in a YA slump in general, and it just sounded like the type of thing that I would think is fine and give 3 stars, like I would enjoy my reading time of, but I wouldn't think about it ever again, and I absolutely really loved it. And I really fell for the characters too. They're 2 of my, that's another question coming up, but there are 2 characters that like really impacted me, which I wasn't expecting them to at all, but I really I liked them as characters. They felt realistic to me. The other one is Ophelia After All, which is a YA contemporary, and if you've been around here, you know that I've been giving YA contemporary 3 stars and below all year, so I was shocked that I gave this one 5 stars, but it's about a girl named Ophelia who is a senior in high school, and she is trying to figure out her sexuality, and she's always had crushes on boys, but she suddenly has these feelings for a girl, and she doesn't really know what that means. It's also about her friend group getting ready for prom, and the fact that they're all about to graduate, and sort of coming to terms with that part of growing up. And I love this book as well. Highly recommend. Question 7 is, who is your new favorite author? So it can either be a debut that you read that you really liked, or an author that you just discovered. I am cheating because I feel like saying someone is your favorite author is very, I don't know, like weighty. And I don't often read that many books. Obviously I read a ton of Brandon Sanderson because I'm trying to read his entire Cosmere, but other than that, I don't often repeat read authors. But I did read my first Alice Oseman novel this year, and I gave it 4 stars, but I really, really enjoyed that, and I plan on reading her other novels as well. I think the one I read is Loveless, and she also has Radio Silence and Solitaire, at least. She might have other ones. So I want to read those. I do want to continue in the Heartstopper series, and I had read the first 3 in the Heartstopper series, which is a graphic novel series, last year, but I hadn't yet read any of her novels. So now that I've done that, I feel like I can say. I don't know if she's like a favorite author, but I feel like I want to read more by her, which says something. Question 8 is your newest fictional crush. I'm going to say Kaladin, the Stormlight Archives, because I love him. Like, I would die for Kaladin. I don't know if it's necessarily like a romantic thing, but I love Kaladin so much as a character. And there's another one in here that's like, who's your favorite character? And also Kaladin. Because like, I don't know. I connect with characters while I'm reading a book, but I don't often like think about characters outside of the context of reading that book. But Kaladin is one of those characters that like, I just want the best for him. So I think part of that is that we get so much of him in the series, and then also part of it is just that I love him. So question 9 is newest favorite character. Again, I would say Kaladin, but also another Brandon Sanderson character from a novella that he wrote called Shadows for Silence in the Forests of Hell. There's a character named Silence who is a female bounty hunter trying to protect her kids and provide for them. She's also an innkeeper. I love Silence. I thought she was an amazingly done character, especially for only being like a 50-page story. Question 10 is a book that made you cry. Unfortunately, I cry all the time in books. I think I've already mentioned a couple of books that have made me cry, but to mention a few more, Once More We Saw Stars by Jason Green. I've never cried more reading a book than I did with that one. It's a memoir about a man whose 2-year-old was killed in a freak accident. It's so sad. It's about him and his like grieving process with that. Another book that made me cry was Dancing at the Pity Party by Tyler Feder, which is a graphic memoir. So it's a graphic novel, but it's a memoir in graphic novel form. It's about a girl whose mother died from cancer. I also cried reading a short story collection called Sing to It by Amy Hempel. There's one short story in that collection about working at a full-service shelter. Full service means a kill shelter. And it's talking about the people who love the animals who work at these shelters, and then how it feels to have to put an animal down. Also, It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I read that for a vlog. I don't know that I fully cried in that book, but I did tear up, and I think I probably shed a couple tears. As you can see, I'm a crier. If there's something to cry about, I will shed tears. I will cry. Question 11 is a book that made you happy, and I have a couple for this as well. I have When You Get the Chance by Emma Lord, which I read during a vlog, so I will link that for you if you'd like to see it. This is a YA contemporary about a girl who's trying to find her mom, Mamma Mia style, which basically means that she has 3 candidates and she reaches out to all of them to try to figure out which one is her mom. It's super cute, super fun. She also loves musical theater, and I was a theater kid, so it's really fun to get all the references. There's also a bit of a hate to love romance. Not really hate, not really love. It's nemesis who have to work together and then they realize they have a crush on each other. It's very cute, very tame, but it's also YA. So I really, really liked that as well. Then I have The Impossible Fortress by Jason Recolek, I think is his name. And this one is almost a heist story set in the 80s about kids who want to... There's two wants. The group of children, teenage boys, they're 13 or 15, or I don't know how old they are, but they want to get the Vanna White Playboy, but you have to be 18 to buy it. So they make this idea that they're going to break into this store and steal it. And then to do so, they're going to befriend the girl whose dad works at the store, who's their age. And the way they befriend the girl is one guy really wants his video game to win this contest. And so he asks the girl to help him with his video game because she's really good with computers. And they actually do become friends. But then it becomes this messy situation. This book was so good. I'm going to have to reread it at some point to decide if I want to stick with the 4-star rating that I gave it or if I want to bump it up. But I really enjoyed that book. And the last book that made me happy is kind of a weird one, but it's The Feather Thief by Kirk Wallace Johnson. It's a nonfiction, again, about a heist, but it follows the guy who, when he was 21, broke into a natural history museum in England and stole 200 dead birds from their exhibit and sold the feathers on the black market to people who do fly tying as an art form. And this book was interesting for so many reasons, and I just enjoyed my read. It was just a thoroughly enjoyable book. Question 12 is the most beautiful book that you've bought or received this year. I don't buy very many books, but this is just such a pretty cover to me. I also bought this year, and honestly, the way that they're kind of similar, is that weird to anyone else? And I have another book here just to show you that I have a type with cover buys, because isn't that the gold foiling moon, gold letters? Am I crazy? Do these look alike? Let me know. The last question on this is what books do you need to still read before the end of the year? I think I have a couple more 2022 releases that I need to get to besides just Babel and Amari and the Great Game. I also want to read Either Or by Elif Batuman. I don't know how her name is pronounced, so I'm really sorry. But I do want to read that book. And there's a couple others that I had on my list. I would like to read Book Lovers by Emily Henry if I can before the end of the year. Just a few more to hit my goal of reading 12 2022 releases in 2022. I don't know how many I've read, but I've actually done pretty well at that, so I'm very proud of myself. But I do want to do that. I also want to read A Court of Frost and Starlight before the end of the year so I can finish up Act 1 of the ACOTAR series. And I don't know if I'll get to A Court of Silver Flames this year, but I do want to continue, and I'm at least going to read A Court of Silver Flames, and then if I don't like that one, I might not continue in the series. I don't know. I also have a couple of classics that I want to read. I kind of want to read Gone with the Wind. I've never read it. I used to watch the movie occasionally. It was one of my comfort films, which is really weird because it's extremely long, but we watched it when I was in middle school for my history class, and I decided I was obsessed with Scarlett O'Hara's dresses. So, that's a fun fact. But I do want to read that book and see just what it's like, kind of. And I would like to at least start, hold on, let me grab them. I would like to at least start In Search of Lost Time by Proust. What's his name? Marcel Proust. I want to read at least Swan's Way this year, if not more than this. So I need to probably start on this because I feel like this is going to take a long time to digest. But I bought 4 of these last summer at a used bookstore, and I've not even picked one up or attempted to read one. So I want to start reading these and just see what happens. But I think with that, that is it for this tag. So don't forget to tag me if you also do this tag. Again, I'm not going to tag anybody, but I would love to see it. This is one of those tags that I watch every single year. And especially the questions about new releases and upcoming releases, because that's what puts books on my radar. So let me know in the comments down below if you have read any of these books that I talked about and how you felt about them. Also, don't forget to give this a thumbs up if you liked it. You can subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content from me, because I do post 2 videos every week, and I'll see you in my next one.